So for those of you who aren't familiar with Boat 4, what Boat 4 is, uh, under our leadership of Chris Laszlo, we're preparing for a division application with the Academy of Management. MSR, Management, Spirituality, and Religion is considered a special interest group. And what we'd like to do is move it into a division category. And so I guess it was last fall that Chris Laszlo organized an appreciative inquiry, and we developed a whole bunch of initiatives to prepare for this application. And one of them happened to be Boat 4, which is looking at research methods for looking into spirituality and religion, spirituality, and management. And we kind of like to call it Lifeboat 4. And it has two meanings. Obviously, lifeboat there's maybe three. I know the Buddhist tradition talks about boats moving you across to a better awareness. Lifeboat in Western tradition is something that saves your life. And I guess my feeling is that what we're actually studying here is life. We're researching life. And life isn't, the whole idea of studying matter in physics is you hold all variables constant except one. Well, if you did that with life, it would be dead. So that calls on us to consider a completely different research paradigm. How do you research things where the variables, you cannot hold, maybe you can hold some variables constant, but you're going to be, that's unlikely to happen. So we need a research paradigm, some kind of way of researching that enables us to observe life in action and in its fullest form, not in a laboratory, but in its expression in our daily lives, in our experiences. And I think that's where spirituality exists. That's where we as human beings exist. I think that Carl Jung said it well when he observed that science has dehumanized the individual by saying, dehumanize the individual by saying that the only value that matters is the average. Well, all of us know that nobody lives an average life. So that means that the experience of the individual, the subjective experience of the individual isn't important. So what we, I think, have in mind is to develop some kind of research paradigm that honors the individual of the experience that we can then share with other people and help them on their path of personal growth, personal discovery, which then also helps us transform the organizations in which we work and live. And I really, I'm not a Buddhist, but I really appreciated the quote that Judy Neal brought to us from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen Buddhist, and basically says that the transformation in the world that is needed is one that occurs internally in every individual, and it is led by each individual. And it has to be really voluntary. We can't impose change on other people. So that's another important idea, I think, in our research, is it has to be invitational. And how we apply it has to be invitational. So I just want to read the objective of Boat 4, because I think it gives you an idea of what we're trying to do. We plan to develop an expansive research infrastructure and philosophies of science that transcend the traditional positivist approach and develops research methodologies inquiring into subtle, traditionally unmeasurable human experiences, such as non-dual awareness, and provide leadership enabling the community of current and emerging scholars to conduct research with social impact. I think I'm really happy with that objective. And today we haven't completed this work, and we're going to report on a couple of ideas or a couple of initiatives within this boat. One is to look at the research methodologies that are being employed in the broad sense through interviews and through just looking. And the other is to actually look at research methodologies discussed in the JMSR, the Journal of management, spirituality, and religion. And we have two speakers with us today who are going to address that. Tian Yuan is Associate Professor of the Department of Business and Tourism and Hospitality Management at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Canada. She'll present her initial findings on the range and types of research methods currently available that may be applied in management, spirituality, and religion studies. And Haisa Gianquento Hosha is the 2021 Fetzer Scholar and MSR Promising Dissertation Award winner. She's a lecturer and a project manager of the Erasmus Plus project at the University of Beira Interior, Portugal, where she received her PhD in management with distinction. Raisa will present her initial findings of a bibliometric analysis focusing on research methods reported in JMSR. So we want this to be an interactive. There will be these two presentations first, and as I said, they're initial, so they're not finalized, and we're open to getting input from everybody here. So I'll invite Tian Yuan to start, and then we'll hear from Haisa, and then we'll open it up to for conversation. And so go ahead, Tian.
Thank you so much, Tom. First of all, please bear with me if I cough during my presentation because I got COVID 2 weeks ago and I'm still coughing. And now let me share my screen. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to present a systematic review of empirical research methodologies employed in the articles published in Journal of Management, Spirituality and Religion, or JMSR, between 2004 and 2021. JMSR has been a leading scholarly outlet for MSR research since its founding in 2004. Our purpose is to map the landscape and evolution of research methodologies of high quality MSR research as represented by JMSR articles, and to stimulate further development in the methodological maturity in MSR research. There has been a growing call for a paradigmatic shift and for establishing a spiritual research paradigm among MSR scholars. It has been argued that MSR constructs resist positivist quantitative methods, and that spiritual processes in the workplace can best be studied through the use of spiritual processes themselves. This is not to negate the merit of positivist paradigms. We believe that the positivist paradigm can be the most appropriate approach to investigating certain topics under certain context in the MSR domain. However, we must also acknowledge that traditional positivist approaches are not adequate for investigating the spiritual core of MSR phenomena, which is often internal, subjective, and supernatural. So non-positivist approaches based on alternative paradigms are much needed in the MSR domain. So this is the background and the rationale for our research. The methods we utilized is a systematic review. We retrieve from the JMSR website all the documents published in JMSR between 2004 and 2021. The database comprises 411 documents, including 296 research articles, 38 book reviews, and 77 other documents, such as editorials and introductions. We conduct a textual analysis of the 296 research articles to categorize the methodologies, For each article, in addition to basic information such as author's title and the main topic, we identify whether it's conceptual or empirical. If it's empirical, whether it's quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods. What specific methods are utilized? What research philosophy is adopted? And what rigor criteria are measured against? We encounter two issues in our assessment process. First, how to define empirical versus conceptual. For this research, we define three categories of empirical research. Category 1 covers research that uses primary data on the focal phenomena of MSR. Category 2 comprises research that uses secondary data on content and the discourse of MSR research papers. Category 3 includes research that uses bibliometric data and systematic reviews. Research that does not use any of the three categories of data are generally classified as conceptual. However, some non-traditional research articles do not fall into this categorization and are hence classified as others, including fictional writings, dialogues, interviews, panel conversations, and memoirs. The second issue we encounter is how to identify research paradigm, especially if it's unstated in an article. We use three principles to address this key issue. First, all research that only uses quantitative methods is classified as positivist. Second, qualitative or mixed methods research that only uses positivist rigor criteria is categorized as positivist. Positivist criteria assume that there is one objective reality to be discovered by objective, value-neutral researchers whose ultimate goal is to find generalizable truth. Common positivist rigor criteria include, for example, following case study protocol to ensure replicability or reliability, reaching intercoder agreement to ensure reliability, triangulation or using multiple sources of evidence to ensure constructive validity, using replication logic in multiple case studies to ensure external validity, seeking generalizability, various techniques to minimize researcher bias, sampling until theoretical saturation, etc. The third principle is for qualitative research that neither makes explicit philosophical stance nor mentions any rigor criteria. We rely on our own judgment using table 1 as a heuristic. This is table 1 that we create based on the literature. It lists 7 research paradigms that we assume to be most relevant in the MSR literature. They are positivism, interpretivism or phenomenology, critical realism, post-structuralism, post-modernism, pragmatism, and radical humanism. These paradigms often overlap with one another. And this is by no means an exhaustive list of research paradigms, but rather a heuristic to infinite paradigmatic possibilities. This table outlines the ontology, epistemology, axiology, and the typical methods of each paradigm and serves as a benchmark for our assessment process. Today, we can only report our analysis of articles published in odd number years, including 181 articles. We are still working to consolidate the results of even number years articles into the current report. So here are our findings. First, table 2 shows an empirical turn around the year of 2013, when empirical studies begin to dramatically outnumber conceptual articles. This empirical turn suggests that the MSR domain as a maturing field of research has entered a new stage since around 2013, compared with its early years. This development is marked by the significant increase of research that is actively investigated in the field, drawing conclusions informed by empirical data. Table 3 demonstrates that the total number of qualitative research exceeds that of quantitative research, and that qualitative and mixed methods research together comprise more than half of the JMSR articles, which is a significant phenomenon considering the overall dominance of quantitative research in management and organization studies. This phenomenon also reflects an important aspect of the evolution of MSR methodologies over the past 20 years. In their systematic review of empirical research methodology during the founding years of MSR, that is between 1996 and 2000, Fernashari and Landin find that 65% employs quantitative measures, 31% employs qualitative measures, and 4% employs mixed methods. They consider the situation somewhat troublesome, since qualitative inductive approaches are supposed to be employed more frequently than quantitative methods to help develop theory and measures in new domains. Table 3 demonstrates that over the past 20 years in the MSR domain, the portion of qualitative research and mixed methods research has increased significantly in comparison to quantitative research 20 years ago. So this change indicates that the MSR community has formed an enhanced awareness of the particularized nature of MSR research and are more welcoming of qualitative and mixed approaches than most, if not all, established management fields. Despite this qualitative gain at the methodological level, positivist research still dominates the MSR field at a deeper philosophical level. Table 4 reveals that 79 out of the 97 empirical research articles are based on positivist paradigms. Only 18 articles adopt non-positivist research philosophies. Table 5 displays that among the 18 non-positivist research, only 7 explicitly states their philosophical roots. The rest only implicitly or unconsciously uses a non-positivist philosophy, which is assessed by us in accordance with Table 1. Moreover, there's a lack of variety of non-positivist paradigms. Table 5 shows that 13 out of the 18 non-positivist research clusters within the interpretivist paradigms. Only 5 has a critical or radical or postmodern orientation. None is primarily based on pragmatism or post-structuralism. Other philosophical approaches or theoretical perspectives, such as post-colonialism, feminism, and multi-paradigmatic research are largely missing from JMSR articles. Table 6 summarizes specific methodologies and methods adopted by each of the 18 non-positivist research. Common methodologies are grounded theory, case study research, and autoethnography. Most used sampling methods are purposeful sampling and theoretical sampling. Data collection methods include conversational or narrative, in-depth, semi-structured interviews, historical archives, documentation, autobiographical works, and autoethnographic accounts. Typical data analysis methods are thematic analysis, discourse analysis, content analysis, narrative analysis, and historical analysis. Most notably, we find that there's a dearth of research on evaluation criteria for non-positivist research. Table 7 exhibits that only 4 out of the 18 non-positivist research explicitly states non-positivist evaluation criteria. 13 research does not state any evaluation criteria. The remaining 1 only uses positivist criteria. Given the urgent call for establishing spiritual research paradigms within the MSR domain, we would argue that it is critical for MSR researchers to create comprehensive, widely accepted, non-positivist evaluation criteria to ensure the quality of future non-positivist spiritual research. Lastly, we find 2 promising non-positivist spiritual research paradigms that have been elaborated and applied to empirical research. They are indigenous research paradigm and quantum research paradigm. Notably, the 2 paradigms share some philosophical assumptions and methodological features, including 1, an ontology that bridges the material world and the spiritual world. 2, an epistemology that involves multiple ways of knowing. 3, purposive sampling. And 4, researcher playing a starring role. Neither of the 2 research, however, touches upon evaluation criteria. Considering that both articles are only recently published in 2021, which suggests that spiritual research paradigms are taking shape and awaiting further development. Our key findings are summarized as follows. The empirical turn around 2013 suggests that the MSR domain is in the maturing process, with the majority of research actively investigated in the field. The MSR community has formed an enhanced awareness of the particularized nature of MSR research and more welcoming of qualitative and mixed approaches than most other management fields. However, positivism still dominates the MSR domain, and there is a lack of a variety of non-positivist paradigms other than interpretivism. There needs to be more research adopting a critical, radical, or postmodern orientation, or other relevant approaches such as pragmatism, post-colonialism, feminism, and multi-paradigmatic studies. Most notably, there is an urgent need for MSR researchers to create widely accepted non-positivist evaluation criteria to ensure the quality of spiritual research paradigms. Lastly, at least 2 promising spiritual research paradigms are taking shape and share several key philosophical and methodological features. Our research only covers the JMSR articles and does not include any other journals or scholarly publications. As a result, only 2 promising spiritual research paradigms are identified. There might be more promising spiritual research paradigms to be found in the when we consolidate the even number year articles with our current analysis results. But we are aware of other promising spiritual research paradigms published as books or book chapters or in non-MSR focused journals, such as Research as Ceremony, First-Person Methods, Clinical Inquiry, etc. So we would suggest that JMSR be more open to research that is non-conforming to positivist traditions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tian. I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead with Aisha, and then, yeah, thank you very much. And then we'll open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you. I will be fast because I have two presentations to do. So, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. I am not seeing you. Okay. I'm seeing my notes here and the other and the presentation here. So, if you need something during, please say, and I will go back to our Zoom call. So, my part is conducting the bibliometric analysis where we are combining with the method's results, okay? And I have some explanations to you about that. Well, first, we are using two softwares. They are free and available to analyze metadata that we can gather on databases as Web of Science and Scopus. In this case, we gather the data from Scopus. That is why we chose Scopus, because in Web of Science there is not all JMSR papers, metadata about these papers, and in Scopus we have from 2004 until 2021. However, 2021 only 2 papers. So the bibliometric analysis so far is covering 2004 until 2020. Okay. As soon as the data is available, we can combine and run the full analysis. So, in this period, we have 379 documents. And these documents includes articles, book reviews, introductions, editorials, notes about the editorial board, announcements, calls, etc. We can see in the graphic that we are in a busting period since 2019 in the numbers of papers per year, that now it's around 35, and it was around between 20, 25 in the past years. And this involves all documents, not only articles. And our metadata says that we have 3,492 citations in these 379 documents, okay? Well, these results are not combined with the method results yet, so I will present just a descriptive analysis. Then we have 78 international collaborations in the publications in JMSR. And in this figure, provided by Biblioshiny, we have the countries in darker blue. They have more publications in JMSR. Lighter, the blue, less publications. Gray, no identification or no publication. And the red lines are showing the international cooperation between authors. Okay? One thing that we can notice from this image is that the collaboration in the Global South is rare in comparison with the collaborations in the Global North. So, and this is regarding the author's affiliation, not author's nationality, okay? Well, these are the sources most cited in the papers published in JMSR. So we have very good outlets and one book collection, the Handbook of Workplace Spirituality. The others, as we can see, are very good outlets. And in this image, we have the 20 most cited sources in the JMSR publications. Well, here we have the most cited articles in the GMSR. The darkest the blue, more citations. Greenish, light blue, less citations, and white squares. So we have no citations. But sorry, I'm seeing that the figure is cut in the end. It's 30, the number there. But as we can see in this slide, the most cited paper has 109 citations. These top 10 documents, they are the documents with more than 50 citations. The other, they have less citations. In this top 10, we have 5 quantitative, 1 qualitative, and 4 conceptual papers. Okay. Here we have the co-citation analysis, and the co-citation shows the frequency with 2 documents are cited together by other documents. So if at least 1 document cites other 2 documents, these are said to be co-cited. Then the part of the clusters that when we have like red cluster, it's more condensed than blue cluster. The blue cluster, for example, that means they have been co-cited more frequently than the others. Okay, and we can see that we have 3 major clusters, and these are the major knowledge structures in the GMSR, but we don't have the final analysis combining the methodology to see how this is evolving. It will be the next step. Here we have the author's social structure in the GMSR, meaning author's collaboration. The 2 major clusters, the red and green, they have several authors, and the purple have 3 authors, and it's linked to the green one. One thing that's interesting to say is that, for example, blue cluster contains collaboration in editorials and in the first welcoming to the new JMSR outlet. But for example, Williams and Allen, Daniels and Franz, and Miller and Nigurish, I don't know if I'm saying correctly, they show regular co-authorship outside of the major clusters, and they are like islands inside of the journal. And we can see that the green and the red clusters are the most developed communities of authors in the JMSR. And in this analysis, I had to check the name of the authors because, for example, Stace Chappell, she cited in 2 different ways. For example, Chappell Stace F and Chappell SF. Professor Fry is like Fry Judge or Fry LW. So I had to combine to organize this analysis. And I looked to these small clusters to see what is the method behind it. And we have most qualitative and conceptual works. I am believing that this green and red communities have more quantitative analysis, but we have to finish the analysis before saying that. This is, well, the 50 most frequent words used in the JMSR papers. We have spirituality with 97 utilizations, religion 48, workplace spirituality 47, and then we have leadership and spiritual leadership, management values, religiosity, ethics, and employee spirituality are the top 10 keywords. So the others are way less mentioned because, for example, employee spirituality, top 10 has only 10 mentions. So this is the presentation about the JMSR bibliometric analysis that we are doing. These are the references about the bibliometric analysis. And for now, thanks. I will share with you now the second presentation. It's about the survey that some of you answered a few months ago. And I will be fast as well. At least I will try to be. Well, the first question that we asked you, it was about the way that you see, you know, your perspective about academic research, and the answers. It was nice to see that most of them, of the respondents, chose more than one, and we have quite good diversity in the answers, and we cannot combine with the results from the JMSR, and because we don't know if the authors are the same, etc. But we can see that there is a difference between what have been published there and how people perceive their own perspective about academic research. Here we asked the respondents to indicate the frequency they have used some methods in their research, in their academic research. So we collapsed some answers to be easier to see in this slide. So we collapsed it often and always, and never and rarely. And we can see that conceptual and traditional or systematic literature review are quite used. On the other hand, meta-analysis, meta-synthesis, and bibliometric analysis, not as often. Here, the qualitative methods, we have ground theory, case study, and ethnography, often used. However, biography and experimental research, not so much, and also phenomenology, it is more or less often used. About quantitative research, we have less use of longitudinal research and more use about from descriptive and correlational research. These other methods, action research, it's near to the qualitative and quantitative research, and almost systems thinking and first person, but non-text, indigenous, and simulation are rarely used. About mixing research methods, so quali-quanti research more used than quanti-quanti and quali-quali mixed method. Here we have an open question about other methods that are used besides the ones that we listed. And we have a few interesting descriptions, like this construction and philosophical, narrative, discourse analysis, and qualitative comparative analysis, combination of bibliometrics and scopometrics, and other systematic methods, and microphenomenology. So we have others research methods being used besides the ones that we listed. That's also nice. Here we have the question about what methods the respondents want to learn or to teach. And we can see that we have a good number of people wanting to learn new methods, and some people want to teach them. And it's interesting that we have 24 respondents want to learn how to build theoretical or conceptual frameworks. It's interesting numbers. it's an interesting number because we had 46 answers, and most of them from researchers that are already doctors. They already have their PhD, and still we have a high level of researchers wanting to learn how to prepare frameworks. Here is the answer about softwares. Also a great numbers of research wanting to learn them. We have a few professors available to teach, not about all of them, but some of them. And we have the demographics about the respondents. We use the list that we have in the MSR website, so we can see a concentration in the United States and, well, UK, India, Canada, New Zealand, following US. Here, a little bit more about demographics. So we have great numbers of younger scholars in terms of time doing research. At the same time, I believe that we have younger doctors because of the numbers that we have there as well, of 76% of doctors. Finally, well, I would like to thank you, the respondents, for your love comments in the end of our survey. It is with much appreciation that we receive your words. So thank you very much. Look forward to hear your comments.
Thank you, Haisha. Great presentation. As the comments are saying, what's going on here with both Ian and your presentation is a kind of a revealing, an archaeology of what has been going on for the past 20 years, and it's fascinating. It's great to see the evolution of this burgeoning field. So yeah, so I think that's great. So I'd like to invite anybody to come forward with their observations, suggestions, and maybe what we'll do is, as this, I think this is being recorded, is it not, Paul? Okay, so that would then give us more ideas as to things that we can pursue in the future here going forward. So opening up the floor here.
Yeah, no, this is extremely fascinating. In some ways, it's like you're mapping the subsurface, right? I mean, at the surface level, you see a lot of waves, but what's going on below the surface and the patterns and stuff like that. And maybe senior people who have been around the block for some time can say, okay, given where we come from, given where the practitioners are, and maybe other interest groups and divisions have been, because there could be some patterns in terms of how fields of knowledge develop over a period of time. MSR is a newer field of knowledge. What would be the call for action from a go-forward basis? Because the historical archaeological analysis is great, but it's not just a snapshot in time. It's potential to give us sort of a roadmap for the future, because upcoming scholars then can apply their minds in those areas to both further MSR's interest as a division, as a prospective division, and in terms of making an impact from a practitioner perspective.
I think you make a really good point, Vikram. I mean, one of the things that we're doing is we're holding every quarter, we're holding a webinar and inviting people to talk about their research methods. And we're hoping to develop, that matrix that Tien was showing us. We're hoping to develop things on the right side of that might not even fit into a box. Maybe there'll be a circle, or maybe, I don't know. So, this whole idea of investigating life as we live it might call for something that's quite different than has been applied in the past. So this is really sort of looking back, and our work is designed also to look forward and develop something, indigenous research methods, quantum ontology, first-person research, dance, poetry, music. I mean, Jyoti talked about that. So, these sort of things we are certainly interested in exploring. And
the reason I say that, Tom, is because one of the fears for a new person in this field is to do something brave and off the left field, and that's always something that one is not sure of, because you want to stay in the beaten track to get more conformance, more acceptance. But if that left field is blessed by people like you, like Ben, from an MSR leadership perspective, then you unleash a creativity of sorts which can help, because in some ways the only way to break out of conformance is to bless it, and this can be a starting point for that benediction, if you may, to say, okay, not only we want it, but we bless it, and we will, it's a safe place for you to try and do those newer things.
Yes, and we mentioned Harold Roth who's talked about first-person research. I've been reading people like Ian McGilchrist, who is very critical of the current scientific approaches in terms of how it constrains people's creativity, limits them, and he's got a proposal of how you could transform this. So I hope to bring that into our, there's a chapter in his new book. I hope to bring that in as part of our conversation. We do want to liberate, but we also want to create a container that people can relate to and show that they're, their dean or their supervisor or whatever. This is the path that I'm following, and this is why I'm following. So we certainly agree that's an important part of this. And I maybe I didn't mention it at the beginning, but this is designed to help us make our application, but it's also, more importantly, designed as a broad-based approach to helping all the scholars out there fit their research into something that they can recognize and that they can that will support their work in a broader sense. That's really our goal. That's our overarching goal. We have a short-term goal of trying to help MSR become a division, but the long-term goal is, okay, let's create a container that enables, and maybe the container itself says it isn't a container. There's always possibility of transformation of that container. Any other comments here, suggestions?
Speaking of that, creating a container to make new scholars feel safe to explore new methodologies, I would suggest that MSR, the AOM conference, MSR group may look to nominate the INU Best Paper Award to non-positivist research, encourage more non-positivist research. As in last year, I attended the AOM conference, and I noticed most, if not all, the best paper awards in MSR group were awarded to positivist quantitative research. And also in our promising dissertation award, I would encourage the committee, the award committee, considering more, non-positivist dissertation. I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure you would exclude positivism, but certainly emphasize other methods. And by the way, I guess the other initiative that's coming out of this, that's coming out of the executive committee, is to develop reviewers for scholarly papers that have the ability to review non-positivist papers, to provide positive feedback and developmental feedback as opposed to criticism and taking down things. I think we're doing a pretty good job of that, but I think that's something that is, part of, that fits into this whole paradigm of being open to other research methods. If we aren't open, then we're not going to be able to experiment. We're not going to learn from our experimentation. So I think that's what we need to do as well. Again, any other comments? Really invite people to feel free. If you have a question, please ask us. And this is how we learn. If you have an observation, please let us know. if you have a challenge in your own research, let us know.
I noticed a question in the chat by Vanessa asking about integrative paradigm by Nandram in 2017. So you were asking why we did not include it. Is that paper published in JMSR?
That's why I posted the 2022, because that one is in JMSR, but it's an even number, so it will be coming up, I guess.
Okay.
But it's there are a couple of questions, Tom, in the chat that were already answered, like in between the presentations. So this is maybe also why the silence ensued, because we were all very excited already in the chat.
All right. Well, tell us what you're excited about. Janelle, you've got your hand up, but if you're excited about something, we love to hear enthusiasm too.
I always have enthusiasm.
I know you do.
I am so excited that we are looking at how we are represented and how we are representing ourselves within the literature. The insights that you are sharing have so much power. And especially for me as an emerging scholar, my hope is, I've got papers that I want to be able to contribute to this community. Once my dissertation is done, I want it to be able to contribute in meaningful ways. As some of you know from the Promising Dissertation Award presentations, or the presentations, my methodology is heuristic inquiry, which seems like it is going to crack through some of the old school empirical things that, Tianyan, you were talking about with the paper being awarded, very traditional empirical approach. What advice would you give based on the research to those of us who are seeking to make strides in these more non-traditional, rarer forms of research within not just the spirituality research domain, but within the management and leadership domain as well?
I mean, I think JMSR provides an outlet for that, and of course, it is also constrained by the reviewers' views themselves. So that's one aspect. I don't know, is there anybody else here? Maybe Ben, you have some ideas?
Yeah, Tom, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I believe, Janelle, it's important to lay out from the very beginning the argument you're making from a paradigm perspective. And you can also cite many notable articles in Academic Management Review that have called for multi-paradigm approaches. Gioia, for example, even Rousseau in evidence-based management, they have really asked to look at other paradigms to deepen our understanding of management phenomena in general. So I think by using that approach, by grounding your exploration or your courageous turn also in the mainstream literature that has been calling for that. Even the presidents of the Academy of Management in their keynote speeches always say we need to explore more. But as you know, a dominant paradigm is always very resilient against change. But that call is there, so just cite it and we will support you.
The other observation I would make, I know this doesn't count for your academic movement and climbing up the ladder, but there are outlets where you can get a simpler form of your research published. So like, for example, in Canada, we have something called The Conversation. And they take academic work and ask you to put it into a form that people can understand. And it's very good. And I don't think you have to pay to get into it. They have a pretty rigorous review system, but they're looking for research from academics. So that's one play. That's another idea, is we don't always have to publish in the traditional journals. We can look at other outlets. And I think if one of our objectives is social impact. And so we, blogs, videos of ourselves talking about our research, all of that stuff, I think, can be done. It just, that stuff isn't counted, unfortunately, for your promotions. It is in some places, but it's not at the edge. And so I'll go to Vanessa.
So I'm coming a bit from, because of the time, also from my natural kind of practitioner view. And I find two things, or two like options and pathways, very interesting. One is, as I mentioned in the chat, the dialogue with the outlet that grants the visibility of certain research. So which is, Catherine and Yohanan, to be kind of like, what is that dialogue? How is it being shaped, and what's the outcome of it? The whole process of it, I think, is very interesting, because it is representative for journals and publication processes in general, even though MSR might be a bit different than other journals, maybe more open-minded. I don't know. That's my assumption. So, and then a second pathway would be, what gets me really excited is that this, your work here is, I think, a very good base for a sort of a framework where MSR as an organization can actually continuously maybe review, seeing, okay, where do we have a focus? Do we have diversity in the terms of ontologies? Do we have diversities in the term of topics, methodologies, etc.? So this can be actually a review tool, like a, kind of like a retrospective once a year. Let's look at that and find out organizationally, how can we actually support in going, in a certain direction also. So it's a strategic tool for organization development. That's what I say.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you. Very, very deep work, high thinking and deep insight.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's really two things going on here: the support of the Fetzer Institute for the, the Fetzer scholars, and there's sort of the overarching, there is a groundswell beneath the surface, and we heard about it this morning with the 4 institutes that are really pushing research in this field. And even yesterday when we heard about interdevelopment, IDG, I mean, there just seems to be a groundswell of this coming up. And what it means is we as scholars need to leverage what's going on in the larger community and be advocates in our institutions for this moving forward. And I would say that my personal experience is sometimes you'll find people in your own institution in the oddest places who will support you. They may not be in your department. They may be somewhere else. This happened to me. I was in a logistics supply chain department, and I was doing my PhD, and I got to know the chair, and he was friendly, and I was telling him about my research, and he said, we got a problem here in this. This is a very competitive university. Nobody talks to each other. Aren't you doing something on emotional intelligence? Why don't you come in and co-teach in this class, and I'll talk to the prof. So he became I didn't ask for it, but it came up. And I'm just saying that each of us has, a responsibility to advocate as well, and be out there and accept no, and move where the doors open. So that would be another kind of observation here. Tien, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to try to answer Janelle's question about suggestions for future spiritual research paradigms. I'm working on developing a Zen-informed spiritual research paradigm. So these are my humble opinions. According to me, a spiritual research paradigm has several characteristics. First, it should be focused on deep, meaningful human experiences. So that's about the topic. And the second, it must be informed by spiritual or religious traditions, which transcends the positivist ontological and epistemological assumptions. I'm not saying you cannot use positivist approach. Actually, in my Zen-informed approach, I'm going to use a multi-paradigmatic approach, which includes both positivism and non-positivist approaches. So that's transcending positivism. And 3, it must be qualitative. It must not be solely quantitative. It must be qualitative or qualitative and quantitative. And 4th, in terms of axiology, it must be inspiring and transformational, both for the researcher themselves and for the research participants and for the readers. So these are some basic characteristics. And then we need to develop a list of evaluation criteria. Don't forget about replicability, because real spiritual research cannot be replicated. So instead of replicability or reliability or validity, I would suggest some alternative evaluation criteria, such as authenticity and resonance. By resonance, I mean emotional, the ability to evoke memories and emotions for readers. And then also reflexivity, researchers' reflexivity and agency, and also pragmatism and morality. That is about the transformational aspect of the research. It must solve real problems, maybe emotional conundrum, real life struggles, and it must be moral. So morality can be and pragmatism can be an evaluation criteria. And last, it must contribute to knowledge, not in terms of the traditional scientific knowledge, but I think it's opening to alternative way of knowing, such as non-dualistic way of knowing, and creating theories that are not causal, linear, but non-linear and cyclical relationships. So that's the characteristics I would propose for future spiritual research paradigms.
Thank you, Tian.
So I just have to unmute myself, Tian Yan. That was fire. That was brilliant. If you have a paper that you write on that, I want the link. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm working on that for my thesis.
That's great.
Remember, you heard it here first.
Tian, I recommend you talk to me later. I'm aware of research of a spiritual master who emitted chi into samples, and they used only positivist paradigmatic research to demonstrate the effect. It's extremely powerful, and it comes from a place of morality as well, but it's only positivists that they used. So there are exceptions to what you're saying, but I agree with your overarching comment. This is what we need in the management field.